Breaking news tonight, Americans on virtual lockdown to slow the spread of the coronavirus.
The pandemic has generated the biggest change in labor markets since World War II.
The United States is starting to shut down as millions of Americans are working from home.
Before the pandemic, levels of work from home were about 7% of days. At the peak of the pandemic, more than half of days worked in the US were from home, which is quite an amazing thing to happen. We were all locked down, but we didn't think it would last. By April, May, people kind of got the sense that maybe this would stick around.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg says his company will start allowing many of its 50,000 employees to work from home on a permanent basis.
Facebook was the first big company that came out and said, we think work from home is going to be here to stay, even after the lockdown. And there was a kind of crescendo of companies coming out and saying, we're never going to return to the 5-day office. I first got interested in working from home in the early 2000s. So I actually collected my first data in 2004. I had a bunch of work from home research, and then 2020 came along. I was getting a large number of phone calls. So journalists, academics, policymakers were contacting me or emailing me saying, what's going on? So we set up this thing called SWAA, the Survey of Working Arrangements and Attitudes, that surveyed 10,000 Americans a month. And we just asked them very basic questions: age, gender, education, etc., where you live, how many days do you work, which industry, and then how many days is it on premises, at home, etc. How much they liked it, were they more or less efficient, did their boss think they're more or less efficient? These are online surveys, so you can get 10,000 answers back within 48 hours. We've also started to collect a lot of other data, kind of putting the pieces together and trying to see the bigger picture. I would say by mid-late 2020, it was pretty clear. This is absolutely a revolution in work. As an economist, there's nothing else I can think of that's really this positive. People really liked it a lot, really liked it a lot. So to just give you a number, folks reported being able to work from home 2-3 days a week was the same as about a 7 or 8% pay increase, which is a lot of money. We're saving collectively, an hour and a half a day each day we work from home, which across all of Americans is hundreds of millions of hours a year. An enormous amount of time. And that time is being spent on more sleep, more exercise, more leisure. There's more time a parent spent with their children. Folks moved out of city centres into the suburbs. The suburbs have really boomed. The benefit for folks with a disability from work from home is huge. There are 30 million Americans with a disability, and before the pandemic, only 6 million of them worked. About 500,000 of them already have entered the labour force because of work from home. So they're happy, they're earning more money. They go from receiving benefits to being net positive taxpayers. So it drives down budget deficit, and they're producing goods and services, pushing down prices. So it's one of these massive social wins. So firms make a lot of money from work from home. Why? Because it reduces turnover by 20-30%. If you're a company, every person that quits typically costs $30,000 to $50,000 to go out, re-advertise, re-interview, retrain, re-get up to speed. So the impact of work from home on productivity is a very complicated question. There are some jobs, 60% of jobs, that you can only do in person. Cleaning, food service, nursing, manufacturing. So productivity is zero remotely. There is about another 30% of jobs where it looks like productivity is neither better or worse, and those tend to be hybrid jobs. We did a big randomized control trial. We took 1,600 people in marketing, accounting, and finance. We randomized so they came in 5 days a week or 3, and their productivity was unchanged. There's a final roughly 10% of jobs that are actually typically more efficient, more productive remote. One example is call centers. Typically, they're 10% more efficient at home because it's quieter, they can hear what on earth's going on. And also they take shorter breaks. You typically need 2.1 to 2.2 kids per couple in order to keep population stable. In the US, we currently have, I think, 1.7. I'm not particularly pushing for massive population growth, but rapid decline is an issue. In some research, we find it looks like if both members of a couple work from home, on average, you're having almost half an extra kid in terms of family size. And then finally, society wins. We're saving, I think I calculated, something like 40 billion miles a year of less driving, and that just is less transport pollution. Work from home and promotion is, it's a classic question. So it depends what your colleagues are doing. There's a team of people, everyone else is coming in 3 days a week. You're the only remote person, the other 9 are going in 3 days a week. That for sure is going to reduce your promotion rate. So I get asked a lot about mental health and work from home. Turns out that varies a lot. If you ask someone in their early 20s, they'll typically tell you, I'm best mentally and physically going in 4 days a week or maybe even 5 days a week. I find it really lonely and depressing and I'm single living in a tiny apartment. On the other extreme, you ask someone aged 37 with 3 young kids living an hour from the office, they may say, I don't want to ever go into the office again, or maybe once a month. The last thing I need is to lose 2 hours a day on commuting. So it varies dramatically. Fully remote, if it's forced on everyone, can be really quite problematic. People get isolated, they don't learn, they disconnect, you get depression, all kinds of issues. I kind of think work from home is maybe like beer or wine. It's like good in moderation, but there can be problems if you have too much. There's some major benefits for being in person. It just looks from the research and my research and others, you just don't need to do that all 5 days a week. There are 2 or 3 losers from the pandemic. So governments that run cities like Washington, DC, San Francisco, New York, they've lost money because of the tax revenues down. Mass transit rates have plummeted. Folks moved out of city centers into the suburbs. They haven't actually really returned. So what is the solution? It's not clear. So should taxpayers subsidize New York subway, the London Underground, Caltrain? If you abolish them, a bunch of cars flood onto the roads and low-income people can't commute. Offices are still emptier than they were before, but that vacancy rate is falling. What we do see is office rents are down by about 50%. The center of San Francisco is now much more lively, but rents are lower. There's more of a mix of individuals. In some ways, I actually think it's a good thing. It's kind of unwound a bit the gentrification of the center of San Francisco, LA, Chicago, New York.
Amazon employees around the world are heading back to the office 5 days a week.
Executive order kicks in today. All federal workers must return to the office or risk losing their job.
Why is the federal government forcing people back into the office 5 days a week? Why is Amazon doing that, actually? They're doing it in order to reduce headcount. The obvious upside is a bunch of people quit. Downside is, guess who quits first? Who's walking out the door first if you ban work from home? Well, it's going to be your top AI talent, your top sales people, your top coders, your top managers. Hybrid, I think, is here to stay. Look, the future is almost certainly slow increases in levels of work from home. Why is that? Well, technology is getting ever better. It makes it easier to work remotely. Look at the Fortune 500. So this is the world's most successful, largest, often best run companies. 70% of them are hybrid for managers and professionals. 12% are what's called flex or remote first. The other obvious, the shark fin in the water is AI. And AI actually interacts quite a bit with work from home because for fully remote jobs, they're very much exposed to AI. But the rise in work from home has been a huge driver of human flourishing. We're all dramatically better off. We now have 40% of Americans that are working from home 2 days a week or more. So effectively, 40% of Americans have been given this amazing thing they value the same as an 8% pay increase. On top of that, we can live further apart, reducing pollution and congestion. It's enabled us to have more kids. It's made firms more profitable. So as a society, it's been an enormous gain. As an economist, it's hard to think of something that's been that positive.